the Upper Room Ministries, youth ministries from the Keene Church. And we are going to just dive into the nitty-gritty this afternoon. No praise set. So I'll go ahead and jump right in to introduce our speaker for this afternoon, Pastor Bernie Anderson. He has been on our minds. We, as far as Pathfinders, have it in our curriculum to talk about certain life issues, and so we bring in speakers. Sometimes we talk about it ourselves. We talked about teenage pregnancy. Last year we brought in Tanya to talk about abortion, which was definitely last year a charged topic with what was going on. And so pornography is a very difficult topic to hit. For me as a parent, talking about sex, relationships, interrelationships, HIV, I can do that. Teen pregnancy. Pornography is just, it is a beast of its own. So Bernie is such a good friend, an old friend of the family, and God put it in our hearts to bring him here and talk to our youth, and now talk to us as parents. So just a little introduction. It's like I've got to get you cred every time. I got to give you a little bit more cred. Does anybody Net 95? Yeah, that's Bernie. Net 95. Was it Net 98? What, Net 98? There you go. You should know. I told him, I said, I almost said that at the university last night, and no one would have known what I was saying, because I don't think they were even born. But Pastor Bernie, he is very familiar. He graduated here at Southwestern with his theology degree, went and got his master's of divinity at Andrews University. So he's very familiar here on campus and in the community. And in 2007, he published a book about the battle he had with addiction to pornography. He was in pastoring at the time and still pastoring 23 years in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and now does amazing things at World Vision. I gave the kids a ton of cred for him. 3 summits to Kilimanjaro. He's going to do it again next year. As a Pathfinder, that's like, wow, that's amazing. So, but not much else to say. We are very thankful to welcome back home Pastor Bernie Anderson. So we'll dive right in.
You guys okay if I stay down here rather than on the stage? Cool. This feels better to me. I like to be close. Like to be connected a little bit to you. I don't like being up there. So, yeah, welcome back. So 2 o'clock after lunch. This is tough. Yeah, belly's full. But hey, it's an important conversation for us to have. So let's try to dive right in and just again, as I told the kids this morning, if some of you were here. I tried to do as much dialogue as we could. It wasn't an ideal space because with this much space and that many people, it's hard for kids to raise their hands. If we had been in a smaller room, we likely could have gotten a little bit more dialogue at them. But we got a little bit. I prompted them with gift cards and stuff. I tried to do what I could. You pay kids and they'll respond, right? You offer them things. So I got some on my own. I know how this deal works. But yeah, we got into it a bit and hit some things. There's one thing I didn't hit that I was kicking myself a little bit later on. Because what happens with porn, what comes with porn is masturbation. And I didn't even go there, and I should have. So, I don't know. Yeah. And I had one conversation post-session, And I did have a little conversation with an individual, with one kid, and I just mentioned that um, often that becomes an even bigger struggle. Like, and it's not a matter of whether we're trying to determine right or wrong there. Okay, when it comes to masturbation, I don't know why I'm starting here, but y'all are getting the masturbation concept. We're going there right now. So, but I remember writing my book. Pacific Press. This is an Adventist publisher. That it wasn't Pacific Press. It was actually Review and Herald. I'm going way back now. There is no Review and Herald. So Pacific Press has it now, but Review and Herald published it under Autumn House. And I remember I went back and forth with them because they did not like how I talked about masturbation. They wanted me to make it this thing where it's sinful, it's wrong, it should never happen. I said, well, yeah, I kind of agree with that, but I think it's going to happen. They're kids. They're growing up. They're maturing. They're learning about their bodies. And if they're exposed to pornography, that they just kind of go together. That just happens, all right? I'm not saying it's ideal, y'all. Don't go out of here saying Bertie said that masturbation's okay. But I do think we have to give a lot of room there for growth and development. So I like to say that while it's not ideal, I don't want to place a whole big blanket of shame on kids if that's kind of where they're at. And I know a lot of kids are going to be there. So I tried to express that in my book. I don't know if I did a good job or not of doing that. But anyway, I wish I had kind of said that because there's a lot of shame that comes with that. When I was exposed and then, masturbation came into play, it was, it was just kind of shameful, and you kind of carried that. And to this day, when I talk to like men's groups, I'll be with a group of men in November, and get this, we're going to be in Branson, Missouri, y'all. So we talk about porn in Branson. So, but they, a lot of times it's older. They carry this into the older ages, and so that's a big source of. It's a habit. It becomes a habit. It becomes an issue. So anyway, that was the one thing that I wish that I hadn't missed with those kids. But we can come back around, and I just went there because it came up in my mind. So, but yeah, so let's kind of dive in a little bit here. I'm clicking, nothing's happening. There we go. The most dangerous playground. That's why I found that title somewhere, and I just kind of stuck. But you remember, y'all remember the picture on the merry-go-round. Thank you. You remember the merry-go-round? Those are so much fun. I mean, that was a blast. We would spin, and you'd throw kids off, and it was great. You get it going so fast. And then you go over to the slide, but those were dangerous too, right? Because what would happen? It'd get really hot and burn your legs as you went down. But there are a lot of things back in our day when we were growing up, and they were dangerous, but nothing like the world that our kids are really walking around in today in terms of just there's a soul danger that's going on, right? Particularly as it relates to media, whether it's social media or television, video games, all those sorts of things, where there's access, where there's a delivery system for more harmful material. We live in a very, very dangerous environment, dangerous world. And so here's what I would say just right off the bat, a little bit of a disclaimer. Number one, I'm not a clinician. I am a pastor by training, right? And so I try to think it theologically somewhat and spiritually somewhat. I'm concerned about the interior life of young people in particular, as well as adults. I want to see them grow and mature and reach maturity in Christ to where they can navigate this world in a healthy and appropriate way, right? So that's I'm not a clinician. That's all I'm putting out there. So if you want to hear from a clinician, there are plenty of those folks, PhDs and LCSWs and all kinds of folks like that. You're welcome. I speak from an experience of walking through this as as an addict and as a pastor. I've been an Adventist now, y'all, going on 40 years. That's I'm like real Adventist now. I've been Adventist 40 years. So I get a card or something. So walking through the subculture of Adventism, I'm familiar with that, so I feel somewhat qualified, if you will, to speak to the issue to a certain extent. The other piece I would say is that my goal is not just behavior modification. Like a lot of times if our kids are exposed to something, we just stop it. Don't ever go back there again because it will ruin your life. And that's true. We don't want them to do harmful things, for sure. But the end game isn't just necessarily behavior modification as much as it is kind of heart transformation, a reorientation of the life around a set of biblical values and principles that they come to embrace and own for themselves, right? Right? Are you with me on that one? Yeah, that's what we want. It's kind of like the faith that we've handed off. If a lot of your kids were born into the Adventist church, then we're always concerned about their beliefs, right? And are they going to remain Seventh-day Adventists? I'm walking through that right now. I have 20-somethings, y'all. There are no more teenagers in the Anderson household. Hallelujah. And so my kids are in different places. I got one at Walla Walla University. I think spiritually she's there with the church and is believing a lot of the things, and there culturally she's solid Adventist. My middle one she probably leans more conservative Adventist, which is interesting too, which is good. It's good for her. That's where she's at on her journey. And then my oldest is kind of not interested at all, right? But what Mom and I intentionally were interested in is that transference, right? But not a pretentious transference. We wanted them to fully own it, right? So it's the same thing with this journey around sexuality, around dealing with the environment in which we live and the choices that they make. As they mature and as they get older, right, they're going to begin to make some of their own choices. And all we want to do is come in right now and try to influence those choices. Now, the younger your kids are, the more influence you have, right? You can take the cell phone. But there comes a point when they're older and you ain't taking that cell phone, right? If you take it, they'll just get another one, or they'll figure out how to get around you or something, right? They'll figure it out. But right now, maybe we're at a point where we can really, really, really influence them to begin to own some of these ideas around practical wisdom and how to make the best choices and how to preserve some delayed gratification types of things, right? Because that's a lot of what this is about, is desires emerge right now. Sexual desires begin to emerge. They begin to discover who they are sexually in their bodies, and everything's happening, right? And desires there. Legitimate desire, by the way, right? Sexual desire is okay. It's legitimate. It's real. Praise God. Amen. We all have it, or you wouldn't have no kids. But we want to be able to help them steward that, and we want to disciple them through this. So that's what you'll hear me come back to a lot, is the word disciple is actually a Greek word, mathetes. I went to seminary, y'all. Mathetes. And it means learner. So our kids, all of us, Jesus, when he was here, he had disciples. They were learners. So we want our kids to learn from us, but what's happened is in the sexual arena, the culture has hijacked the learning, right? They just kind of slid in. I'll never forget this, y'all. And please don't take this necessarily, don't take this politically, just take it at face value. I'll never forget when my wife and I decided to let our kids watch Disney, all right? And I remember to this day that I think that had an effect on my kids when it came to relationships and boys. I have 3 girls and boys and all that sort of thing, because Disney portrayed it a little bit more provocatively than I would have wanted my kids to, right? And these are, so don't take it politically, just for what it's worth. It was TV, it was media, and we made a decision around letting our kids watch it, and I remember the effect. So all that to say is, we do live in a culture where we have to be proactive, where we cannot stick our heads in the sand, where we have to engage. And so I'm really gonna harp on the idea of discipling and getting in the mix with our kids and teaching, because there's there's a sex education that's happening and has happened, and you and I got a lot of work to do to come back in and begin to sort of shift it the other way. Is that cool? Does that make sense? It's a discipleship process. It really is. The same way that we discipled our kids around everything that the Adventist church has taught us, and we handed that off to our kids. We got to do the same in this arena of sexuality. So, okay, it's still not working for me. Sorry. Unless I'm doing something wrong. No? There we go. Oh, let's go back. Go back one. Yeah, so just real quick, I'll share a little bit of my story. I want to hear some of your fears as parents. I got a little bit of data. What should you do? Where can you go? And we'll do some Q&A. Is that cool? We'll try to roll through this fairly quickly. So next slide. My goal with being with your kids this morning, and whenever I go and I talk to groups, is to have a conversation about pornography and sexuality from a Christ-centered, gospel-oriented, but culturally aware perspective, underscoring the fact that God created sex as a gift for our good and his glory to be experienced in the way that he designed. Finally, challenging students to live courageously in light of ever-increasing pressure to conform to the sexual ideals of the current culture. So I'm kind of an icebreaker. I just kind of roll in. Again, I'm not a clinician, and just kind of give Adventists permission to talk about sex and porn and masturbation. Right? Because historically, in our culture, we haven't done that. We just haven't had those conversations. Right? We've just kind of been afraid to. And I want to get to a point where it's just normal. It's just, it's not maybe it won't ever get normal because it's so taboo. But I can tell you, as a young kid who came from a broken home, stumbled across the Seventh-day Adventist church school, and then kind of found my way into the Seventh-day Adventist church. I know God was leading in all of that. I'm super thankful for that. But I have been exposed to pornography at the age of 9, and then as a kid, as I entered the Seventh-day Adventist context, and you guys were so big on all these things that you were teaching me, whether it was about the state of the dead, the book of Revelation. I went to a Revelation seminar. I did all this Bible stuff. But, what was absent from that, even though all of us kids were experimenting physically with one another. That was just happening because we were at the age where that's supposed to happen. So if you had a girlfriend and you guys, those things just progress. It's going to happen, y'all. We all know that. And so there was no discipling on that part. All right, we were getting good stuff up here, biblically and so forth, but we weren't getting some of those conversations around sex and sexuality. So it was a great environment, but it was missing a couple of those things that help us navigate some of the bigger things in life. That we were definitely told don't have sex because that produces children, and you don't want to do that right now. But we weren't necessarily given solid guidance to properly sort of view sex as this beautiful thing that God gives us. So I come in and I'll just dive into a little bit of my story. So I come in and kid from a broken home, been exposed to pornography, and in this school we're seeing young ladies and I'm excited about that. And yeah, I mean that was the thing. It was noticeably absent. Was some of those bigger conversations. A lot of shame. So I think a lot of kids sit in this space of I'm an Adventist. I'm a Christian kid. I need to be doing well. I shouldn't struggle in this area. I shouldn't have any issues. And that's just that's not right because you're going to struggle in that area. It's going to be you're going to have that tension between those because those new desires are emerging, and so you have to deal with that. So you're going to make mistakes. There's just going to be that normal sort of natural course of it all. So I struggle with that. On top of that, I want to be a pastor. So I'm like, oh man, I can't be a pastor and kind of have this thing lingering on me, right? But I'm sort of making my way through this thing, and it's a big secret. Didn't want anybody to know. So I kind of followed that pattern. It was secret. It was hidden. Nobody knew. I would, you know, the technology is evolving. So you go from VHS tapes to DVDs and high-speed internet and all those sorts of things. So I'm just kind of being carried along the way. Pretty much like most of your typical American males. Like even people say, our stories probably aren't terribly different. You may have found porn under your parents' bed, like at some point, right? And your parents were church parents too, right? You may have found it there. You may have found it out in your backyard, or a kid brought it to school. A lot of times that's how it happens. I was talking to a kid today. He said, my friend brought his cell phone to school and showed me this on his cell phone. That's how the exposure happened for them. So for me, it was a random encounter with a magazine in the bottom of a closet. Then it was a VHS tape in my own home. I remember a Playboy magazine being in my house at some point, and I just kind of happened upon it. I'm an only kid. It was just me, so I found it. But there was a seed planted there, and it was, it just kind of stayed with me. And I kept it quiet. Carried it into pastoral ministry, right? But what's developed is something more of trying to do the right thing for the wrong reason. And that's a really unhealthy place to be. Like, I knew kind of this struggle happening over here with me, and when nobody was looking, it was a break in integrity. And the way I made up for it was just to do it to not disappoint people out there. So yeah, I was involved in everything, right? I was a leader on every campus I was a part of. You asked me to do it? Yes, I'm there. I'll do it. I worked at summer camp, did all the stuff, right? Here, same thing, Southwestern. I'm up front, I'm whatever you need me to do. And that was driven by, right? It was the right thing to do, but wrong motivation in some ways. I'm not saying that was totally like bad motivation, but I was motivated because I didn't want to disappoint anyone. But if anybody ever found out what Bernie was doing when nobody was looking, the porn stores that he was going to in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, when nobody was looking, they'd be disappointed at me. With the onset of high-speed internet, that just drove me deeper because it was fast. It was accessible. You could get it quick. It was, you're anonymous. No more dial-up internet, baby. That took a long time to look at porn with dial-up internet, by the way, just for those pictures to load is ridiculous. You're like, really? Come on. And so, but I'm headed that way. Some really, really foolish things that I did. Paranoid that somebody's going to see me, going places that I would never normally go to get that fixed, right? Driving farther out so maybe no one will see me to rent this video. It was hard R, it was unrated videos. When I couldn't access the internet and so forth. So, needless to say, when the internet came on and we were full blown, just immersed in it, so much access with the internet, that just drove me deeper, deeper, deeper. I get to a point where I am pretty much accessing pornography every day, Sometimes those would be binges multiple times a day. My wife discovers it. Painful, darkest place I've ever been in my life was when my wife found out. And broke her heart. My wife, y'all, she's from middle of nowhere, Arizona. It's hotter than, I literally refer to it, forgive me for saying, I refer to it as hell. It's like, it's out there, it's just hot. Mojave Desert, that's where she grew up. Her parents still live in the same house. So think of this, me, broken home, divorced parents, latchkey kid, only child, the whole nine. You're like, I'm a mess. Been exposed to porn at age 9. My wife, exact opposite. She grew up in this home that doesn't mean that she doesn't have her level of brokenness and pain growing up, but essentially, she grew up with 2 parents, solid folks, are still married, still live in the same house that she grew up in the middle of nowhere, Arizona. They weren't Adventist either, and they would not let her go to, I don't think she saw a movie until she was in high school, y'all. They just believed it's just kind of the way they were. Just keep them playing out in the desert all the time, and the kids will be fine. There's probably something to that if they don't die in the desert. But she's just this very, if you will, innocent young woman. And we meet here on the campus of Southwestern Adventist University, right? And I see her in the cafeteria, and I pursue her. Because I was about to graduate with a theology degree, and no peach, no preach was the word. So you had to have y'all didn't catch that one, did you? No peach, no preach. You had to have a wife or something, right? So so I pursue her, and apparently it worked, right? But here's this one who is so just the opposite of the way I grew up. I don't, she's just, and so here I was now, after she had stood in front of a pastor, her pastor husband, and we took those vows, and she's now looking at her husband, and she's like, "You're not what I thought you were. You're not what I thought you were." That's not what she said verbally, but that's what we know is going on right here. And so eventually, I would continue. When she caught me the first time, I was sorry I got caught, but not sorry enough to do the real work to change. And so she continued to find me, and I continued to break her heart. And after a while, there's only so much that a woman can take, right? And so she had to go into kind of a protective mode. We've got kids, got to take care of them. I got to think about a future without, because he is not coming through for me. He's here, but he's not really here. And she had always kind of had this thing in her mind, there's something up with this dude. I know he's a great guy, but there's something not quite right. She couldn't put her finger on it, but she knew something. That's the impact of pornography, by the way, right? Pornography, it fragments you. It creates separation. It tears down intimacy as opposed to building intimacy. And so that's what she's feeling this whole time. This is the first 10 years of our marriage. That was essentially my whole addiction, maybe a few years prior, so about a 12, 13-year addiction to pornography. And the big chunk of it was that first 10 years of our marriage. So my wife refers to our marriage as the first marriage and the second marriage. And she much prefers the second marriage over the first, because the first was full of pain and darkness and brokenness and confusion about this guy. He's supposed to be a guy. On Sabbath mornings, he's the spiritual guy. He's preaching sermons and all this, but outside of that, I'm not sure who he is. So we walked through that very dark time. The Lord was kind to me and merciful towards me, and led me to a place where I got up enough courage to confess. So I confessed to another pastor. His name is Mike Tucker. All of y'all probably know Mike. And he's my mentor and friend and a dear, almost like a father to me. And so I called him up, said, "Can you come to my house?" And when I called him, I was kind of like, I really hope he doesn't answer, because I really don't want to have to tell him. But he answered. And he came over, and I confessed to him right in the living room of my house in Arlington, Texas. And in that moment, there was a real relief. There was a major relief that I felt. And God had always kind of said, if you'll just confess it, you'll find freedom. So that's what I was telling the kids this morning. Pornography, sexual sin always are stronger in the darkness. So what we're doing here is so important. So thank you, parents, for just being willing to talk about it. We just got to get it out there in the air, talk about it, and say porn and sex and masturbation. We got to say all those words and just get it out there and have the talk, because we don't do our kids any good if we leave them unempowered or disempowered. I don't know what the word is, but I believe that knowledge is power in this case, man. And so we want to have the conversation. We want to talk about it. Take the covers off of all of it. Even if there's spaces where there's brokenness and there's mistakes and there's pain, we want to talk about it because I think it empowers the kids. And so my journey has been now a 20-year journey of moving into deeper sobriety and staying well and staying sober and not acting out. So now, y'all, I can stay in a hotel room by myself and not go looking for it. Amen. Yeah. I can travel and not have to worry about, falling off the wagon, so to speak. My wife, it's taken the last 10 years, the second marriage, and we're actually the last 20 years. Oh my gosh, wow. We're on 30, y'all. Next year is 30. So it's taken the last 20 years to regain the trust. Because you know what happens there? Trust is severed. It doesn't matter if you turn the corner and you get going down the right track in the path of sobriety. You have to regain and re-earn trust. Trust is earned. When I talk to young couples and they've kind of been through a similar thing, especially with pornography, I'm like, whoever it is, typically it's the dude, okay? Sorry, dudes, but typically it's the dude. Like, dude, don't just demand instant trust. You don't get that. You got to earn that trust back, right? So those initial days after my wife, after she came back, she had left, and then she came back. Thankfully, God was moving in all of that. I won't spend a ton of time there, but when she came back, those next several months and those next several years, I had to earn trust back. So the computer was always open and visible, right? And if she came by me, I made no sudden moves. You see, hands right here, screen right here. What really won her over, though, was the work I was doing in groups and with other men. That speaks volumes, because what is that saying? That's saying that I'm really getting at the root cause of the problem. Because the outward thing is just the fruit, right? When you're acting out with porn, that's just the fruit of something deeper that's going on with you. Porn is not your problem, is what I'm saying. Porn isn't the problem. It's what's going on internally. So I had to dig down and really work with a lot of that stuff. And so she was grateful that there was a vulnerability with other men going on, and a more vulnerability with her, more openness and more transparency. I'm not this closed off guy anymore. She can really see who I am. And so that would begin the journey of sobriety that's now taken me these last 20 years, and I'm grateful for the journey, but it's taken me to a lot of places to talk about this stuff. I was a guy who didn't want to talk about it, was happy not to say a thing about pornography, and now I can't shut up about it. So that's kind of here it is. So more on your kids here. Studies show that most young people are exposed to porn by age 13, according to a nationally representative survey of U.S. teens. 84.4% of 14, 18-year-old males and 57% of 14, 18-year-old females have viewed pornography. So it's not a matter of if, it's really a matter of when. It's with us. We live, it's integrated into our culture and to our society. Porn is just here, and it continues to manifest in different ways. There continue to be more technological innovations and evolutions that it comes to, so they can deliver it. And it's all about money, right? It's all about getting culture and society hooked. One of the early books I read on the issue is called Pornified. Pornified. It's by, I just forgot her name. I corresponded with her a little bit. But she has a paragraph in there, I wish I had it for you, that is so powerful. I don't think she's a Christian. It's not like a Christian book you wouldn't find in like your Christian bookstore or whatever. But it was a deeply spiritual book, because she recognized that this thing isn't just it's not just a natural world thing. It is a spirit. There's something spiritual going on. And if I read to you that paragraph in her book, you'd be like, holy cow! But she uses the word omnipresent. Pornography is omnipresent. And what word do we use to describe God? Right? We say omnipresent. And it was just so powerful the way she said that. But that's just the culture and the world that we live in. So there's an awareness that we have to come to grips with, y'all. We're naive if we're thinking that our kids aren't going to see porn or see something provocative or see softcore porn or some way, through a friend at school, through a Google search, some way, they're going to catch a glimpse of something that's sexually inappropriate, right? Curiosity about sex, Google searching questions about sex, seeking definition of a sexual term. So again, this is kind of where we really have to step in and begin to provide the answers, because the culture is going to give some answers, but they're generally not going to be the best answers, right? But our kids are curious. It's a natural curiosity to begin to understand about their own bodies as well as the bodies of the opposite sex. It's a natural curiosity. And what has the internet provided us with? Instant answers. Yes, it's everything. And the constant question in our household is this: girls, did you learn about that through TikTok? That's all we ask. They come up with something and they say something. So where'd you get that from? TikTok? That's where, yeah. And they believe it, right? That's where they're getting a lot of information from. So if I can get information without any interaction, without any relationship with anybody else, without the hard struggle of questions and dialogue and coming back, which one do you think I'm going to choose? I'm going to go to the internet. Because I get an answer there without you, like, asking me any questions. There's no relationship there. We don't have to dialogue. I just go get my, oh, okay, I'm informed. I'm good to go. I can move about the world in that way. And so the whole way that our kids are getting information is kind of undermining our ability to actually educate and build in the things, the true things, the wisdom and the truth and Scripture and all of that we want to build in, because there's an access to information that seems way more, it's quicker, there's less involved with me getting that information. So curiosity is happening there. All right, let me pause right here because I've been talking a lot. Questions, comments, thoughts, concerns from you at this point, related to my story or anything I've said to this point? I have no gift cards to give out, so don't wait on that. Sorry. Yeah. It certainly promotes promotes a sexual agenda. Pornography comes with that to a certain extent, because there's LGBTQI pornography. So there's no question that, yeah, culture is making inroads into schools, and they want to deliver content and material and ideals into kids via the school. There's no question about that. Yeah, no question. So again, now in a lot of cases, you live in Texas, you're probably going to be able to prevent that to a certain extent. In some places you can't, or in some districts you can't, or in some contexts you can't. So the responsibility is still on us, because they're going to move, they're going to go out, they're going to be exposed to all kinds of stuff at some point. And so it's still on us to make sure that we're counteracting whatever stuff that's been delivered to them as quickly as possible. Or, yeah. 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 So the biggest thing is the dialogue. You got to start the conversations. And I think the assumption has to be that, to a certain extent, our kids do know something about sex and pornography and that sort of thing. So it's a matter of having those conversations. And what we did in our home is we did a lot of family dinners together. We literally sat down and had dinners, and we said, okay, let's talk. What's going on? What's happening? What's this? What's that? Social media, this, that. I saw you posted this. I saw you posted that. This is what's going on at school. This is who you're hanging out with. So a lot of that, what can trigger it to a certain extent is you sharing your story. So story is the language of the heart, and it can often get the heart to move a little bit faster. So if you, without the gory details, can share, this is kind of where I was when I was walking through this stage of your life, right? And you tell it you say it in such a way that it lends itself to the questions and the dialogue. Not as a testimony of what not to do per se, but as an opportunity, because you don't paint yourself as perfect in the picture. You just real talk, real conversation. So it could start with, because kids want to know about you a lot of times. They want to know about your story. They want to hear about you. They want to know you. They want to know, my kids always got the biggest kick out of hearing me talk about stories from college or academy and that sort of thing. That could trigger some conversation. But at the very least, you can just ask those questions. Like my wife was very good about this. Me, not so much. But my wife would ask, has that boy sent you a picture of his penis? She was real quick. She would ask that. She would ask, is he asking you for pics? Are you sending pics? So that could be part of it. Pray for those teachable moments. Look for those moments. If there's something happening in culture, those are opportunities. So there are lots of opportunities to trigger the conversations. And it's not just one, it's ongoing. It's constantly, because they're being bombarded constantly with all kinds of information. Yeah. Right.
I just wondered if you could speak briefly to the pitfalls and red flags that, or the way it shows up differently
For the
in
ladies.
young men versus young women.
Yeah. So young men and most of us men who are here can relate to this. It's a pretty simple thing. The eyes are, we're kind of triggered visually by what we see, and so if I'm exposed to pornography through a Google search, I see an image, I'm likely going to click on that, or if there's a provocative ad or something like that, that can get me going as a male in general, right? Not to say that women aren't visually stimulated as well, but so yeah, us guys, it's pretty simple to figure out magazines, any of that media visually that can kind of get us going, get our minds going down that path. In general, for the young ladies, it's something a little bit deeper than that, and often it can begin in a dialogue. It can begin through a text message, and that feels a little bit more intimate and a bit more personal. They want to, they want to go a little bit more talk. They want to talk. They want more information. In fact, there's more pornographic literature that's out. That tends to be more of a segue, or if you will, a gateway into heavier pornographic material, is reading about it and consuming it, and imagining it that way, as opposed to a movie or a film or anything like that. The fascinating thing about some of the data points to the notion that while women may start there, young girls may start there, and even move to like sharing photos, they will move to actual physical encounter faster than the guys. The guys are okay receiving photos, watching videos, watching photos. Again, remember, it doesn't require anything. There's no physical connection. There's a distance there. So I can use this for my own selfish benefit, right? And I don't have to be connected to you anyway. Whereas young ladies are like, nope, we got to move this along. We got to be close. There's got to be a connection. That's kind of the dynamic there with younger ladies. But there's a rise in more of the hardcore like image consumption among younger girls too, which is somewhat alarming. So it is happening that way as well. But you think about what a young lady is saying when she sends an image to a young man. She's essentially saying, I want you to see me, right? I want you to see me. And really what she's saying deeper is, I want you to know me. But if this is the first way that you can know me, then I'm willing to let you see this so that you can know me. She recognizes that there's more to her than just her physical presence, but that's sort of that's the currency that she has to exchange to try and get something bigger from this guy. So a lot of times it'll start there and then it'll progress and end up being sexual and so forth. So, but the cry there, the desire is to be known. To be known. We all want to be known. And there's so many people out there, man, that want to be known, not just at a surface level. We crave deep relationships, y'all. And all of this is driven by that deep, God-given desire for intimacy, connection, and relationship. And if I don't get it, I'll settle for false intimacy. If I don't get it, I'll just pretend and cope with the lack thereof with pornography or with alcohol or with drugs or with whatever. I'm just coping to get by because I don't have what I'm even meant for. I don't have what I'm created for. We were created for relationship, right? So we're created for, y'all, to know and to be known. And if I don't get that, then I'm going to have to stumble my way through this life without it. That's why church is so incredibly important. That's why it was so painful during all the COVID stuff that we couldn't be together, right? So we've got to do better at this coming together thing. We've got to do better at being in each other's lives things, because that's the thing. I guarantee you right now, if we just got better at doing life in smaller communities, the porn problem for us and our kids would go away. Y'all don't believe me, do you? Y'all don't believe me? You should. But I can't make you. But I think that's the core issue. Because where you have legitimate connection and intimacy, you understand that you're cared for, valued, known, and loved. Why do you need to spend any time with that? It does not provide you with that in the least. Yes, there's normal urges and desires, but you can overcome those things. But all right, let me keep rolling here. Let me go back. So these are just some of the things that get people kind of hooked into porn, right? So your kids, they certainly have availability, they have accessibility. These phones, man, this right here, this upped the game right there. I don't know what age y'all started, but I know my kids got, they got smartphones pretty early. Again, my wife and I, we look back and go, what on earth were we thinking? Because this just opens up so much right here. Smartphones, y'all, that we pay monthly for. Yeah, anyway. Accessibility, affordability, anonymity. It's quiet. You can access it anywhere. It's free for the most part. One study showed that approximately 45% of teens who consume porn did so in part to learn about sex. Again, trying to figure out what's going on with this sex thing, especially if there's not a lot of conversation about it at home. And another study showed that 44% of boys who watch porn reported that online pornography gave them ideas about the type of sex they wanted to try. So there you go. It's being modeled. You got instructional videos right there online all the time. So we're fighting an uphill battle, y'all, right? Definitely an uphill battle. Despite how unrealistic and toxic porn can be, survey results also show that over half of 11 to 16-year-old boys, 53%, over a third of 11 to 16-year-old girls reported believing that pornography was a realistic depiction of sex. So again, there's the believing what you see, like online, is like, it must have credibility. I'm seeing it online. And the whole mind and the belief system is being impacted by what they see. In 2021, 88% of teens reported having their own smartphone. There you go, 2021. 88% of teens reported having their own smartphone, as well as 42% of 10-year-olds with a smartphone. I mean, that's a lot of phone for a 10-year-old. But, I mean, as you can see, again, I'm not shocked by that, right? Our kids all have access to the internet and to phones. So, one more. Anybody know what that is? Nomophobia? It's a legitimate scientific term, I think, clinical term. That's the fear of being detached from your smartphone. That is the fear of being detached. So you ever gotten in your car, driving down the street, and you go, nomophobia. You don't have your phone. So, I mean, again, how often have we sat in our houses and everybody's on the phone? Right? We do that all the time. Again, not dogging it. It's not bad. It's not evil. But you can see the disintegration of connection and intimacy and relationships that it can create. So, funny thing, this is very interesting. A couple of thoughts real quick. One, a new thing. So I work at World Vision. I lead a team. I got 10 people on my team. And they know I'm Seventh-day Adventist. World Vision is not a Seventh-day Adventist organization. So every Friday, I send out a note to my team and say, hey, amazing work you guys are doing. Love y'all. Shabbat Shalom. Basically, I'm saying Sabbath, I'm out. It's usually 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And they just know that. Bernie's going to do his Sabbath thing with his family. And it's been fun to watch that because I emphasize that to the team. Our work is pretty intense a lot of times. Take your time off. Make sure you're Sabbathing, right? And so one of the guys, a more senior guy on my team, not like senior in age, but he's been around as long as I have at the org. He was telling us about his experiment with his family. He has 3 younger kids. I think his oldest may be like 13. And him practicing a Saturday Sabbath because they do church on Sunday. So he said, we're gonna do a technology-free day, right? And so that's what he does on the Sabbath. And his kid was like, so he surveyed his kids afterwards, and the kids were like, yeah, Dad. The younger was like, yeah, it was good. His oldest was like, I don't know, Dad. It would have been better with food or something like that. He's like, if you'd included a little bit more food, maybe I could have gotten over the fact that there was no technology here. But what stands out to me is their intentionality around disconnecting from these devices. Old school Adventists, we didn't, okay, maybe new school Adventists too. We don't turn on the TV on Sabbath, right? A lot of times we don't. Maybe you do a little bit now, but I don't know. Anyway, but back in the day, we didn't turn on the TV on Sabbath. And then we got smartphones, and this is perfectly okay. I mean, you got TV, you got everything right here, right? So and I'm not, again, this is not being critical. I'm just saying that's how culture shifted, right? We can be connected. And I'll take you back to the church social days and the veggie corn dogs on Saturday nights in the gymnasium at Little Rock Junior Academy. And we had socials and everybody came together. Remember that? And something shifted when media came and evolved to VHS tapes. What did we start doing then? Again, the movies aren't terrible. They're not bad. I'm not describing an evil thing here. I'm just describing the dynamics of our community shifted. Now this media piece came in. We all got these TVs and VCRs at home, and we went to our homes with smaller groups. But we weren't interacting with each other necessarily. I mean, we were somewhat, but we were watching this thing on TV now. Changed a lot of stuff. No more church socials on Saturday night, right? No more volleyball where people lied about the score and stuff like that. I still have trauma from that. But no, I'm just calling out how how there has been this shift in how we connect now. And I think the real deficit is that we've lost connection with each other. And we have to work really, really, really hard at relationship and knowing and getting to know each other. A cool trend that's been happening, a lot of churches are investing in their lobby space more. Why? Because they want people not to just exit out the back. They want them to hang around and talk more. I love that. But I still think we've got to get better at small groups. I was a pastor for 23, almost 24 years. The hardest ministry in the church to create and to keep going and to vitalize was small group ministry. We just had a hard time. We couldn't get small groups of people together. You could get them together in Sabbath school, but that's a different environment. But can you get people together in a space where there's a level of vulnerability and connection that is really, really profound? And I've yet to find that healthy of a space in many Seventh-day Adventist churches. And perhaps even outside of the Adventist church, but this is the community that I know. So why do I tell you all that? I think that's what's playing into a lot of the desire for, a lot of the pornography consumption. I just know that's where, because my recovery involved, the most significant part of my recovery, I did a small bit of counseling with a therapist, which again, I'm all for therapists. I do it. I think people should. My wife and I did couples counseling with the therapist. Absolutely do that. I direct people there all the time. The most significant work, though, was like right in my own house, with my wife, with my girls. So maybe one of the questions you might have lingering in your mind is, my story is very public. Maybe I didn't tell that part. My story kind of went very public because I started talking about it, and it was actually right here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So it got picked up by the media. So I was like on all the TV stations in Dallas-Fort Worth. Seventh-day Adventist pastor, hooked on porn. Went over great. If you were here, you know what I'm talking about. It was in the newspapers, went on national television, Fox News. Yeah, I was all over the place. Newsweek magazine. Yeah, so it was all over the place. So with that, obviously, comes a piece where my kids now, I got to deal with that. And so kind of one of the coolest things that happened is that I told my story at Walla Walla University a couple of years ago, my middle daughter was, I think she was maybe a junior at the time, but she introduced me, and she knew exactly what I was going to talk about. And she introduced me, and she said, this is my dad. I can't even remember exactly what she said, but essentially what she said was, this is my dad. This is his story, but it's a story of God changing his life and transforming him and that sort of thing. But she got it, right? And so again, that's all that. It's very meaningful, that piece of it. But a lot of this stuff has to go back to the fact that we're struggling when it comes to our relationships. Let me pause there. Any thoughts, questions, comments about any of the data, any of my story? Yeah. Let me go here and then I'll come back to it. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, no question. So it certainly produces a lot of anxiety. So the mental health is impacted. But in terms of the addictive process, again, I'm not a clinician, the neural pathways do get locked into that one, it's like a single track mind, if you will. So if you experience any sort of displeasure, or if you experience any sort of pain and you want to escape that pain, your brain automatically signals, oh, remember porn? That gave you a great escape. So that pathway to addiction is really, really easy, because when we're experiencing pain, when we're experiencing struggle, we want an instant fix of being free from that pain. And so pornography is super easy. It's anonymous. Nobody sees it. There's nothing to inject. But it gives you the same effect as if you snorted a line of cocaine, right? And then it becomes addictive. That's the impact on the brain. I think I've got a couple of slides here that talk about, right, can some negatively impact self-esteem and mental health. I think this is the one. Yes, it can take our brain's natural stimuli, our desire for intimacy and connection, which that's what I've been talking about all along. Y'all gonna get sick of it. Our longing to feel strong or desirable in our relationships, our interest in a particular feature or activity, and give us more quantity, more exaggerated, and more supernormal versions of that thing, until it can override what we think is normal, warp what we perceive as exciting, and make real intimacy seem less interesting by comparison. Oh, that's why oftentimes guys will pass up legitimate, real sex with a partner and settle for porn. Because the porn has become so exaggerated, so big. And the scariness of connecting with a real human being in human flesh is too much, right? So that's the scary part about how it affects our brains for sure, is that we'll begin to choose the pornography over real people. Anything else? I don't think I had. I think I ended on see it as wrong. Oh yeah, that was interesting. Young people don't see it as bad or sinful. Only 32% of 13 to 24-year-olds see it as wrong, or that same group, 56% think it's wrong not to recycle. Did you catch that? Yeah. Right, it's worse than recycling. Or recycling. Not recycling is worse than viewing porn. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Right. I haven't seen any data. Here, what is success, y'all? What is success? That they don't become a porn addict? That's pretty good success. I'll take that, right? That it doesn't become a habitual use, that they don't become habitual users that lean on pornography to escape troubles and pain and anxiety. Certainly that's a success. But at least I haven't seen it yet. Maybe it's out there. It could be out there that people have tracked a group of teens, Christian teens in particular, and watched them come through and see where they land. But I think the success is, I think success has to be that that students, that young adults, young people are conscious, that there's an awareness, that they get the fact that that this thing is harmful and it can take you down a path and it can ruin your relationships. And then that there's a consciousness around the fact that there are loving, caring Christian church people that are on the journey with them to help them and to be there when they make mistakes. Because here's the thing, y'all. I mean, not everybody, but a high percentage are not going to do the right thing and the best thing all the time. That's just life. How many of y'all did that? So success, I think, is that we're willing to take the journey with the kids. And that we're seeing, because it's like youth ministry. I was a youth pastor for a number of years, right? Like, you don't ever get to see the benefits of your ministry when you're a youth pastor. Not until 15, 20 years later when that kid comes back to you as an adult. And they say, hey, I want to get married, and I need you to do some premarital counseling with me. Right? I get to continue to speak into this young person's life, right? Or they want you to marry their kid, or they reach out to you and say, man, I remember when we had that conversation and you talked to me about that, and right now I'm walking through it. Can we talk again? So we won't see the benefits of your Pathfinder ministry, which, by the way, God bless all of you. Really, that's not the easiest space to be at all. And I always kind of refer to Pathfinder ministry as kind of the Adventist churches. It's kind of in my mind, it's our most significant space outside of the Adventist classroom. But I mean, you got to do the academic stuff there. Outside of the classroom, it's the space where we get the opportunity to shape and to disciple kids the most. Sabbath school too, but Pathfinders is a big one, especially when you go out camping and stuff, and those trips, all the experiences. All those things are that process of discipling kids. So don't ever think that when you are with your kids and you're doing, a Pathfinder thing, every little thing that you're doing is shaping them spiritually. I wholeheartedly believe that. Every prayer you pray, every correction you make to them, how you speak to them, how you guide them, how you do a devotional with them, every trip you go on, and all those things, man, that shaped me as a young person coming through. And so you're doing incredible work. So thank you for being a Pathfinder leader, if you are a Pathfinder leader. If you're a parent, that's good that you got them there too. Anything else? I'm going to wrap it up here in a minute.
In your process of going through your ordeal, did you find it beneficial to go back to when you were a kid and you found the magazine? I mean, is that helpful in the conversation with the young people? Asking, hey, when did you first get exposed to that?
Yeah, because people can relate to that if it's real. Yeah, I don't think that's a bad thing. No, to help people, because one of the things that you believe when you have this struggle quietly, I thought for sure I was the only one struggling. I'm the only pastor on the planet that struggles with porn, surely. Well, turns out I'm not, and I wasn't at the time. And so when you tell a kid that, they kind of go, "Oh, shoot, you found stuff the same way that I did? Wow." That just says real. It sort of validates their journey and so forth. And I think that's a pretty powerful thing. I think your stories do matter. I think our kids knowing us and hearing us talk about where we kind of didn't have it together and where we were finding our way through this tricky, crazy world of all kinds of stuff, and our relationships and that sort of thing, and how we navigated things, I think those are powerful. Those are really, really, really powerful. I'm still telling stories to my kids. My kids say some funny things sometimes. I call them kids. They're adult people now, basically, right? But my daughter said something very interesting the other day. It almost kind of made me sad. she was referring to her boyfriend, which is actually, this is okay when I tell you this, that the boyfriend feels this way. Her boyfriend said that, hey, your dad's kind of hard to get to know. You don't need to know me, sucker, right? So, but if she had said that, I would, red flags would have gone up because I want her to know me. She needs to know who I am. But yeah.
So I feel like we just kind of touched the surface of this.
Yeah.
Following up on her question is, we know it's out there, we know it's happening. What we haven't talked about is for that kid who's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, that is addicted.
Yeah.
Period. There's no, we're past the.
He's habitually accessing pornography, or she's
Exactly.
habitually accessing. Yeah.
What help is available for that child? You mentioned, you work with other men, and that was affirming to your life.
Right.
And obviously that's not available for a child, and their brains aren't probably even ready for that.
Right. Right.
Concrete.
Yep.
What is available? What is the plan of action?
Yep.
Once you get there, where are you?
Yeah. Therapist. You need a therapist who has done sexual addiction work with teenagers. That's who you need to go to. And they'll have a plan. They'll lay it all out. That's where I would go. Yeah, I've not prepared that for anyone. I'm sure it exists. I'm sure. Now, whether or not they're Seventh-day Adventists, I do not know. But they're inpatient programs. I don't know if they have them for adolescents that young, but an adolescent therapist who works with sexually addicted or habitually or compulsive users of pornography would have that information likely for you. Again, generally, my work has primarily been with older men, and I point them in some directions to access. But that's where you're going to find your concrete. If you want a pathway of recovery through a therapeutic place for an addicted child or teen, you got to go to a clinician. And obviously, all the other pieces of that, of a community and a church that's supportive and parents that are engaged, all that applies. But to get legitimate, hardcore therapy to help a kid access places of pain, trauma that may be driving it, you gotta get a pro. Yeah.
This obviously doesn't take place directly in front of us parents.
Right.
So how do we know if this is even going on?
Yeah. There are usually some clues. They might be a little bit more, they might spend way too much time in their rooms. They might isolate. But some of that is just sort of normal teenage angst too, right? So you never know if they're just going through one of those phases. Like when my youngest daughter, who is my favorite, no, she's not really the favorite, but when she was coming along and she hit those ages and she was like, ah! I was like, oh, what happened to you, right? But it was just normal kind of crazy stuff. But yeah, you might see some isolation. You might need to see some irritability. You might see more anxiety. You might see them not kind of doing their normal. Maybe they shifted from, they were kind of normal doing this routine, following a path, kind of as a normal teen would in school, healthy relationships, and then they kind of took a turn and turned inward more. You can look for stuff like that. Certainly more time here or on a computer, that would probably send up some red flags. Just more consumption would be a big one. Anybody else? What else have you seen? I know you read books and you're reading articles. Anything else you've seen that would indicate somebody's looking a little bit more at porn and online harmful stuff? Yeah. Wow. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Right. They'll shut it right down. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully there's some solid dudes in your world, in your life, some guys that they can talk to. If it's not a pastor, most pastors would welcome an opportunity to have the conversation. But again, at a certain age, people have to kind of make that choice. It's that old adage right around all addiction. Unless somebody recognizes that they have a problem, they're not going to take action. And so if I'm a young man and my mom's kind of bringing these questions up, and maybe she's even knows that I look at porn, I'm not going to be super responsive to that. That's just kind of creepy and weird. Um, yeah, it's creepy and weird. Exactly, yeah. So at some point, though, that young man is going to have to sort of come to a place of decision around how do I want to, how am I going to deal with this stuff in my environment, in my life, and do I see it negatively impacting me in my relationship with my significant others and so forth? And do I want to do something with that? There's only so much that we can do as parents, right? And now we can constantly kind of be that thorn in the flesh to our kids, which I kind of like being that sometimes, not gonna lie. But at the end of the day, they have to come to a place of decision and say, this is something's going on here. I got to get into this. And they will seek it out, man. It's amazing what kids can find when they go looking for it. It's amazing. Yeah, they're super resourceful when they need to be. And a lot of things. You hungry? Yeah, will you make me some? No, I ain't making nothing. You hear them in the kitchen, right? So, go ahead. Yep. Right. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Yep. They hear it. Yeah. Beautiful. Yes, y'all hear that? Lots of great content out there, podcasts, TED Talks, and they can strike up those conversations that we were talking about, but you're absolutely right. And it's amazing how much students and kids absorb if you put it on in the environment. So thank you for that. That's excellent. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 It's time. It's an ongoing thing. Remember, this is not a one-shot deal, y'all. This is an ongoing sort of dynamic, relational reality that we're all walking through until kind of those kids, get up there in age, and it still may resurface even later as they're married and so forth. Some of these things, yeah. Sure. protect me. Yeah.
That didn't come from me. I never told her that.
Right.
She didn't watch anything pornographic. She could
No,
watch
no.
a bad movie, right?
Right.
A kid shouldn't watch.
Right.
Those at a certain house.
Yeah.
But just that she had
The sense that,
the sense and also the willingness to even let me know that I'm like what is success? That's success for me at that moment.
love that. Love that. Way to go, Dad. Woo. Good. And that is part of it, right? And developmentally, wherever they are, age-wise, there's a protective mode that we go into. So we should all, especially if you have younger ones, you should definitely have some sort of filtering software on your computers, obviously. You should have your computers out in very public spaces so everybody can see the screens. That should just be kind of normal for all of us. And if they have smartphones, you should try to make them as dumb as possible, right? If they have smartphones, try to put things on them to keep them from accessing certain things. Try to dumb them down as much as possible. But in terms of some places that people go online, Focus on the Family actually really has a great section where they talk about pornography, and they talk about sexuality and so forth. So I do recommend if you go to Focus, I forget what their website is. I don't think it's focus.org, but focusonthefamily.org or focusonthefamily.com. New Life Ministries is another website. I think it's newlife.com. It has every young man's battle resources there, that sort of stuff. There's a Seventh-day Adventist 12-step program at the North American Division. I totally cannot remember the name of it right now. But there's another resource there called New Freedom to Love. And I was involved in that project. Mike Tucker was involved in that project. So those are some Adventist voices that are around that you could also access. But if there aren't any more questions, I am going to just pray and move on. I see more questions. All right, yes. Yeah. Focus on the Family was. Interesting. Yeah, yeah. I probably made some assumptions there. I have not delved into that. Just ignore that part of it and grab the other stuff then maybe. Yes. The more suggestive sexually stuff, yeah. 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 Oh, it is, yeah. It's a great point, yeah. There is data to back that up too, that the more consumption of the, for lack of a better way to put it, softer core stuff, it can indeed lead to harder core stuff. That is true. So again, around media, all media isn't evil and bad inherently, but there is some discernment. That's really where we want to move our kids to, is to be able to, like your daughter, sir, his son, was this, no, daughter. She had discernment in that moment that, Dad was trying to protect me. So I love the word discernment. That's where we want to move all of our kids to, that they have a sense of figuring it out on their own, that they can see truth from error. And that's partly due because you've been speaking into their lives all along the way and protecting them along the way as well. Yes, sir. Yeah. That was, yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So my girls, at that point, I've got three, and they're spaced apart 3 years. So one of them probably was in like 6th or 7th grade. The other one was in 9th, 10th, 11th, and the other one was in high school, upper high school. So they ran this age span, but we had the conversation. The youngest one wasn't so young that it was inappropriate, but we had the conversation around the table. And how when boys came around, I mean, I was just super. I mean, we were the type of parents that insisted that everybody stay kind of in view of everything, right? And kind of very, very community oriented. And it wasn't. We weren't the. We did a lot of like group stuff as opposed to the individual like go off in a car date stuff until they were older type of thing. That was our approach. Now everybody takes their own approach, but I was part of those conversations. We tried to. My wife was very good about making sure that Dad was, because my natural tendency is to want to totally go in the other room having that conversation. I'm just being honest, but yeah, I tried to hang in there too and give my perspective as dad because they're my daughters. And one of the most powerful things that, again, just for the dads, that a dad can do, especially if they have daughters, is just to, again, to affirm that inherent dignity that their daughters have. To let them know that you see them, they're beautiful, they're amazing, they're powerful, and that you see more in them than just their external beauty. Because I got girls, right? So they went through those stages where they are very body conscious and very aware, and if people didn't like them, maybe they didn't like this about their bodies, and so we were tried to be as intentional as we could about affirming them and making sure people, that they knew that they're much deeper than just the external that they are. Yes? Oh, cool. This church? This here? Oh, awesome. Hmm. Mm. Yeah. Right. Wow, I may have to poll the audience on this one. You know, being the lack of familiarity with our subculture would be obviously a fairly big difference. So there'd be almost a little bit of a language barrier there because they don't know all the language. But that could probably be overcome. Um, it's hard to say. I mean, there are assumptions that a Christian therapist is going to make about our Christianity and our version of Christianity that may not line up. And so that would have to be a hurdle that we'd have to overcome. We just have to make sure we kind of understand. Because theologically, we probably might part ways, and that might affect how they treat at some level. But yeah, I might have to ponder that one a bit to see where the departure is. But a lot of therapists, especially if they're experienced and skilled, can navigate that fairly easily. And they may even do their own research about Adventists, and they have an Adventist colleague that they can kind of talk to. Yeah, I haven't heard about any major gaps in terms of questions to ask. Boy, again, I have to spend a little time on that too. But I love that question. I love the thinking around that. I probably just need to spend a little. Anyone here have thoughts around that? Yeah. 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 Amen. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Right. Right. Yeah. don't let that hold you back. Yeah.
Access services.
Definitely access the services, especially if you're really if we're in a crisis mode and we, like you pointed out, that we got someone who's really gone down a path of addiction. We need to get them help from a pro really quick. Yes, ma'am. True. Yeah. 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 A lot of clinicians are doing via Zoom and therapy via Zoom. A lot of resources like that for sure. Um, Anyone else? Yeah. Mm. Right. Yep. 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 Do the research. Sure. Right. Absolutely. No, great word. Great word. All right, thank you guys so much. You've been amazing. Y'all know we've been here like 90 minutes. That's a long haul on a Sabbath afternoon with full tummies, man. I'm amazed. Anything else? I mean, I could pray and then let everybody go who wants to go, and I'm happy to hang out and chat even more. You've got wisdom to share with me. This is a collective. It is a community. We're in this together, parents, right? So talk to each other, keep the conversation going, access resources, and share those resources. You guys see each other on a regular basis, probably in your Pathfinder clubs, but keep the conversation going, and then keep bringing people back to bring it back to the top of the talk sheet. But you just got to keep it going, and then try, talk about it. Get out there with your kids and mix up with your kids about some of these topics and see how that's going. And don't be afraid to fail. If you kind of blow it and they get turned off, that's fine. Circle back around to it, and it'll land at some point. It'll land at some point. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. I know. Yeah. Yeah. It's totally taboo. Yeah. 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 Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Right. Right. Yeah. Help each other out. Yep. No question. Yeah. Wait a second. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you. Everything you said. Thank you very much. You that's what I'm getting at. It's really grassroots. It's grassroots. It starts with us right here and sharing whatever we have, and I can get some stuff to Gigi that I have from previous presentations. Some of it might be slightly outdated because a lot of the stuff changes constantly as well. But that is the mindset. It's grassroots. It's connecting. It's sharing information, not being afraid of doing that. And if you have to have your own little parents get together about it, do that and so forth. But thank you for that. There was one of the best lines from my journey when my story went really, really public. I had to go talk to my elders at my church, and I had this precious, precious dear saint of an elder. I love her to death. She's passed away now. But I remember sitting down with her. She's just a matriarch in the church, right? I think she's probably in her 70s, maybe slightly older at the time. And I sat down with her one-on-one, and I'm telling her, this is what's going on. You've seen the news and all that. And she's just kind of looking at me like, she's like, well, we never thought you were perfect anyway. Yes, that's what I wanted right there. So yeah, it was good. But it really is. It's a community working together, and you guys have been great. Thank you so much. If you need to hang back, I'm going to pray and let you go. Or Gigi, do you want to do anything? Okay, I can pray and let you go, and then I'll hang around. We can chat some more. So, Father God, thank you so much for this time that we've had together today. I pray, Lord Jesus, that the powers of darkness have been pushed back significantly today. I know, God, there's so much more that can be done and that we're going to do, and that we're going to come together around how we can best support one another and support our kids. But today, we've pushed back, to talk about it, Lord, to put it out there, to call out the evil that exists in our culture, Lord, that's determined to evil that exists in our culture, Lord, that's determined to shape the minds and hearts of our kids, and we're not going to stand for it. We're not here for that. So, God, I just pray strength and blessings and courage and wisdom over every parent here. I pray, Lord, that you would move in every conversation, that even tonight as they go back and maybe conversation is stirred up around this, that it would trigger something significant with their kids that could be part of the journey, Lord, to shape them around making decisions about sex and sexuality, especially the decision to turn away from and to stay separate from pornography. God, we love our kids, and they are a blessing to us, and we know first and foremost that they are your kids and that you love them. So we trust and surrender them into your care. But we're not going to stand by either and be passive, God. We're going to engage, and we're going to do what we need to do, Lord. So in partnership with heaven, God, we pray that you would just be with our kids, and that you'd especially be with their hearts and their minds, and that where they need protection, Lord, you would protect. And where there needs to be something that removed and something forgotten and something just cleansed from their minds, God, I pray that you would remove it, that they wouldn't have any memory of it at all. But Lord, do your thing, and we'll give you all the honor, glory, and praise. Amen. Amen. Thank you, guys.